mommy juicing her coffee or just tired as hell?
I don't think she's.
No, I'm tired. I actually subbed for 4th grade for the first time, and they wore me out.
Why?
She substitute teached.
All right,
Why
family.
not?
I am
Why
ready.
not?
We're ready.
All right, tell us
so
you're recording
ready.
already.
Yeah.
Oh,
just figured
man,
we'd get all
I
this
gotta
on
act
there.
Right. Okay, let's go.
Grabando.
We got a show, and we got two very important special guests with me right now. And to my left, that might be your right if you're looking at it. This is my wife.
Hello.
Yes, I have one, and she's married, and she exists. So this is
Unreal.
Nasach, pronounced like I always say, Satchel.
Who do you say that to?
Whoever I tell your name to. So she
I didn't know that.
yeah, she's interested in what we're doing, Neil. And I also have Neil Galarte on here.
Hey,
He's
hey,
the
hey.
founder of Wild Style Media and the director of the Miracles Atheists movie. How about that?
Insert applause here.
That's right.
We'll do
Hi,
it.
everybody.
So this is a unique show, where I felt personally called to make a movie. And I called Neil like 5 years ago and I said, hey, I got this idea. What do you think? And Neil kind of gave me some pointers. He's like, yeah, maybe we'll get started for, I don't know, $7,000, maybe do a short or something like that. And then I just kind of blew it off for 5 years. Maybe not that long. Was it 4 years, Neil? Something like
And
that.
then I was like, well, guess we're not doing it.
Yeah. A lot of moving and shaking
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
in our lives. But, I was just driving. We were doing a family vacation to Nashville. And I was sitting there driving. And I was thinking about another movie that Neil did called The Messengers.
Mm-hmm.
Your best work, apparently. Is that right,
Yeah.
Neil?
Okay.
Anyway, I was thinking about that movie, and all of a sudden I was thinking about a documentary I saw where there was a guy who was going around town praying for people, putting his hands on people's knees and covering their eyes, and blindness was being removed, and people weren't limping anymore, and they were healed miraculously. And I just felt in my spirit, atheists who hear this won't know what I'm talking about or probably discount it, but that's okay. I felt in my spirit that God wanted me to make a movie like the one I saw, but to take 3 atheists with me. And I never even thought about atheists, or I didn't really, beyond for all my atheist friends now, I like you, I love you. But at the time, I didn't really want to have anything to do with you. So it was very uncomfortable, but I kind of rationalized, what's the word I'm looking for? Rationalized it. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, probably $200,000 to make a movie. Look, give me $200,000, I'll make your movie. No problem. I'll know it's you. But I've since learned that God didn't really work like that, but he kept sort of continuously nudging me. And I remember another instance where after I blew this whole thing off, I was talking to a friend who had a monster podcast called Ham Radio 360. And by the way, we all might start wanting to get familiar with ham radio, looking at the way the world is going. I'm not going to go down. No, I'm not going to go that rabbit hole. But
yeah, I'm about to say,
so this podcast, yeah, 30,000 views or 30,000 downloads a month, I think he was getting. And he felt like he wanted to start this Christian podcast. And I told him, I said, Kale, his name's Kale. And I said, Kale, what you need to do is you need to start interviewing people that have experienced miraculous things and ask them about that. That'd be a great podcast. And this was 5 years ago. And he goes, yeah, that might be, because he was having trouble getting it off the ground, or it was just kind of vanilla, and he wasn't really impressed with what he was doing with the Christian podcast. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I felt in my spirit again, no, Nick, you need to be doing something like that. And so I successfully blew that off for another month or something. And I was sitting in church, and I was listening to a guest preacher say, he was talking about faith. And he said, faith is risk. And I never thought about that relationship before. It was just a faith. You just need to kind of have faith and believe, whatever that means. But he said, faith is risk. And then when he said that, I was listening to it and basically challenging the assembly to take a risk. And I was thinking, and what was my risk? And all it came to me again. I would say, you're not making my movie. I told you about a podcast. You're not doing that. And would you do a live stream for 4 hours?
Oh, that's right. That's how
Yeah.
that came to be.
So
yeah, I'm like, what?
So I did it. Well, I didn't do it again. I kind of blew that off for a couple more weeks, and we were watching a documentary together. And it was weird when that document is another documentary about miracles. And when that thing got over, it was like midnight. I put a post out on Facebook because I was like, I'm doing it. I got to do this live stream thing. I'm going to stop my disobedience. And I put a post out there. And, I'm not sure if you remember it, but no, I never talked about faith, Christianity, anything. It was just all my online business and try to get clients. That's all that stuff I was doing. So I put this thing out there, and it was basically, I'm tired of aggressive Christians. That was kind of how I teed it up. If we can't unify as in the body of Christ or something like that, what do you think the atheists think about us? I'm thinking about starting a project that has to do with this. If you're interested in learning more or you want to be part of it, whatever, comment or message me. I had like 25 private messages. I think I ended up having, 200 something odd comments. And a week later, I was on a live stream with an atheist talking about miracles. And in 24 hours, it got like 2,000 views. And so I said, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I did that for a little while and ended up putting that on hold. But all the while, this movie thing was in the back of my mind.
Yeah, but then you moved from the 4-hour live to podcast.
Yeah. And then that was I took like a year off. And then I started the podcast with Marcus. And then Marcus is no longer, he's supporting us, but he's no longer co-host.
Right.
I was kind of like, what are we doing with this? And God's like, what about my movie? So I called Neil back. I'm like, hey man, you remember that conversation we had 4 years ago?
No.
And Neil,
Who are you? Who are you?
Yeah. And by the way,
it's funny hearing you tell the story because clearly, I don't know, you say you forget about it, but clearly it was on your mind and you ask us and we're just like, yeah, no, we don't remember.
Yeah. That's interesting, right?
I mean, your perspective on it.
Meanwhile, we're in North Carolina, Neil's in Florida, and we're doing this.
Nick has an amazing way of he'll really think on it hard, and there's a hard intent to do it, but then he has to think it through all the way, right? So I imagine a movie, which he's only appeared in one, he hasn't necessarily made one from scratch. Right. That could be scary, right? Like it is no little task. There's a podcast you can record in your room, a live stream like we're doing right now, and then there's making a film, which takes tons of money, tons of people, tons of it. So I can understand that it was a little bit like, I'm an everyday person. Like, how am I going to even know where to start?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I didn't know where to start. So, and then Neil we started talking about it. I went down to Florida a couple times. We started shooting a little bit for like a crowdfunding campaign, which hasn't come out just yet. Shoot was great. And what cool story about that though? So I go down to Florida about every quarter. I try to, because that's where home base is for work. And I was like, man, we need to get like an atheist. And I'm in Florida. I'm no longer in Florida, so all my atheist connections have kind of dissolved if I had any to begin with. And I was at the home office and I was talking to a guy that I knew, and I had prayed for his mother. And she had a terminal disease or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but I prayed for her and she got healed. So he was just like overwhelmed by it. Nobody's ever prayed like that, I guess. And I'm talking to him and I don't even know how this thing came up. I think I told him about our shoot, Neil. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of looking for an atheist. He goes, my son's an atheist. And so Jordan Stewart, I got introduced to Jordan Stewart through his dad, and it kind of worked out. So I had an atheist connection in Florida. So all these little pieces started coming together, and non-believing friends will just, I'm not sure what they would say. That's probably just a coincidence, right? I don't know. Can't speak for them, but
my perspective,
Well, you could also say
my perspective is it's what does it matter what they think?
It doesn't, but I'm trying to. I want them to be involved with this process. I mean, they're
in the movie, but there's a difference between them being part of the movie versus them understanding why you've come to where you are today. I mean, I guess that's just, it's great to share it, but like.
And then there's God's timing. I kept telling Nick along the way with the what felt like many umpteenth delays is in a way sometimes I believe that this is Neil only talking. I believe that sometimes God delays things because he wants to see who's going to last. Like if it's too quick and too short, we all get excited, we release it, it loses, it's just done. But sometimes when you last a long time, it's kind of like the what do you call it, like the NASA shuttle going up and then the tanks fall off. Not everybody can stay on for the whole ride. And I think that's kind of where we are, right? We're in orbit and a lot of people have fallen off, whether that be support or belief. And now you're dealing with who's left. Now you're dealing with the ones that held on or are in our new stratosphere ready to receive what we're trying to bring, right? So I believe that even though it's frustrating, that it's like, okay, we're in the right headspace and they're in the right place at the same time. And I think that's what's going to make a little bit of a difference.
That's a really good point. Actually, I love your analogies all the time. I did leave out one key point though, about kind of the miraculous and the way these things and timing, just like you're saying. The one reason I called you back is so during the live stream days, I very mediocrely pitched this movie. And I said, hey, if you want to donate to this thing I'm doing, I have a PayPal pool, which no longer exists, but I had one. And I put a link on the website and I just kind of forgot about it for 2 years. And then all of a sudden I look and there's like nearly $4,000 of a contributor. There's a couple contributors, one person in particular, I won't say his name because he didn't give me permission to, but that to me said, okay, wow, now I sort of have accountability for doing something because somebody's actually putting a lot of money towards this project that they believe in that I don't even know if at the time I believed in it anymore because I didn't know. I kind of forgot about it. So that was, to me, that was a miraculous thing in and of itself.
Well, I
for
remember
real. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, but I also remember around that time you were also trying to figure out, like, it almost seemed like your podcast was coming to almost an end, like a natural kind of end, or not rebranding, but like you're shifting gears or not sure what to do with the podcast. So I think we also talked, and I was just like, well, why are you moving forward with that if you still, have this nagging feeling? It was just trying to trace back your step and say, well, how did you get to the podcast?
Right.
And I think you went back and it was like the movie. Right. Because you're like, well, no, I don't want to do, I'm nervous about doing a movie. Yeah. Right. And then you said, oh, I'll do a podcast. And then it was like, no, maybe you do this live stream. And then it's kind of like peeling that onion to go back and say, okay, it started with this movie. And then you said, oh, I'll kind of go and risk. I'm comfortable doing this, doing that. And then I said, well, then why are you?
There's a ton of confusion.
Let go of the podcast and go back to what was the first request, which is do the movie.
And then there was live events too. On top of that, like we'd set up the podcast live. People that follow know that you heard the live events. And Neil, you were part of the live event back in November. So that was cool. Fun. Yeah.
Everything builds.
Yeah.
Sorry, everything builds. We have a small, tiny delay, but everything builds, man. And like, I really felt like that trip was necessary. One, to complete production on the crowdfunding video that we were designing, because we're going state to state, and you're stretching a very limited budget to do so. And then that event kind of showed me that this was real, because up to then it's you and me talking, or you, me, and Naz in the kitchen. But then when you walk into a Christian store filled with people that are coming in and not leaving. And then I'm looking at the level of the interest in the topic, and I'm thinking, okay, I think this is real now. I think this is green light, man. I think we get the message, God. And that's kind of when I flew home. That's what I left with, which was a bit of a confirmation, since we waited a long time, that, okay, this is legit. I think all parties are in. So now the next step is to tell the world that we're going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, you left, right? So this is kind of how, we're talking about the podcast, because everybody listening, they're podcast listeners. They're not movie watchers because we don't have a movie. So I want to tell you about the podcast. So in May, there's a lot of confusion. So we were doing live events. Marcus moved the church north. We as a family moved south. So we're far apart, and Marcus had to focus on the church now. And we mutually decided it's best for him to go ahead and do that. No ill anything. I mean, he and I are still really, really good friends, but we parted ways from the podcast. Essentially, he's a good cheerleader, but that's really it. And so I was like, man, this is it's different. And everybody at that assembly of Marcus's church, they were helping with live events. I kind of had this team, and now that he's no longer part of it, it just kind of felt weird. And I was praying about it, and I was just in confusion. And then when you left, Neil, you had spiritual warfare. I had spiritual warfare, and you and I talked about this.
Yeah.
Neil got attacked physically, big time. You were in the ER for what, 5 days?
5 days. And well, I've never prayed for people on the street before. I've never gone to that level. I came back and literally a few days later was in the hospital for almost a week.
So all you think that we're in this Christianity thing because it makes life easier, and it's a big, I don't know, mental delusion. It's persecution, man. Like the Bible talks about persecution, that we're going to suffer for his word. So if we're in this thing and you're really in it, you're going to start seeing resistance from the other camp spiritually. So Neil got attacked physically, and you mentioned that we were out in the streets praying for people. Yeah, the night before we did the shoot at the event, we went out and prayed for people on the streets, and it was awesome.
In the
we
rain.
met a couple atheists out there too. It was raining, and like there was all kinds of resistance. Is it all spiritual? I don't know, but the rain was there. It would have been very easy to go ahead and just hang it up and say, we're not going to do this tonight. But no, we persevered and we did it, and it was a powerful night. So Neil did that. We're geared up. We're doing the shoot. Like we're on it. So he gets attacked physically, and I get attacked mentally. I just start second guessing myself. I start getting and I'm not a depressed person. I'm usually pretty content and happy person, but man, I was dragging. I was mad. I think I was mad at you. I was just like, it was just not a good week. We were both struggling. We both got attacked. And so I was at the end of that, probably about 5 days as well. Neil, I remember it was a Friday. I was just praying because I was confused. I said, okay, what do I do about this podcast? I'm like, we got the movie, but like all of a sudden I just got upset about the movie. I didn't feel like people cared. I think that's what it was, Neil. I was like, nobody cares. Nobody cares but me and Neil. Like, what's really going on? And so I and I don't know why I got that from the event, because people actually do care. That was the lie from the enemy, lie from the pit of hell. But I was praying. I was like, okay, I don't have the time. I think it's another thing. I was worried. I spend so much time doing stuff, ministry stuff. I have 3 boys. I got this podcast, and I manage 2 offices for my work. Right. And so like, there's a lot on my plate, as Neil's got a lot on his plate as well. And so I'm like, I can't do all this. What do you want me to do? And then I'm praying, and what came to me just out of nowhere. That's why I know it's the Holy Spirit. Is you and Neil got to work. You've got to work on this movie. It's a process. You've got things to do, right? Take those sessions and record them. Your community wants to be part of this process. Get their feedback. Atheist, believer, whatever else denomination or faith people have. What do they want to see? And take them along for the journey. You got to do the work anyway. You've got to let people know what you're doing. The podcast needs to be focused on that. That came to me out of nowhere. And then I did a test. I do tests. And I did my test with her. And I remember sitting down. I remember that. Yeah, I'm sitting on the couch. And I said, yeah, I feel like I need another co-host. And I think like maybe it needs to be Neil. Right?
Yes.
And here's the thing, Neil. I don't think I told you this. I'm sitting down with Satch, and I'm like, she's going to just shoot this thing down. I'm like, what? But I pitched it to her because she's my toughest critic. My biggest.
I know I burst bubbles. That's all I do.
Yeah. Burst bubble. She's the bubble burster.
I'm so pragmatic. I'm like, yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that vision.
So I never really, and this is weird, Neil, because it's been 4 years. I never told, she had this whole different idea about the movie, right? And I told her about the movie. I'm going to tell everybody about it too, if you haven't heard already. I told her the purpose of the movie. And she goes, huh.
Not what I was thinking.
She goes, that's interesting. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking about what I just told y'all, doing this with Neil. What do you think? And you know what I don't know if you remember what your answer was, but I remember because it was a significant part of my life. She says,
No, I don't remember.
if Neil doesn't want to do it, I'll do it.
Wow.
She did. Yeah.
When he told me that, I was like, cool.
I said that? No way.
Yeah.
You got that on recording?
I got it on the recording. And so like, and here's the other thing, Neil and
I don't remember. That's so funny. I do remember talking to you. I'm not on the mic. I feel like I'm in the mic.
But you keep turning your head. So you can talk.
It's awkward.
Why don't you just put it like this?
Because then I can't, it's over my face. I feel like then
it's not over you. What do you want to see yourself in the mirror?
Yeah, because then I feel like this is what you see.
It's okay. As long as we hear you good.
I don't know.
Whatever. We're good. I mean, it doesn't matter. Okay, whatever.
Just
do what you got to do. You need to get taller, I guess. So,
no, I don't remember that. I don't remember saying that. I do remember you.
Maybe it was the Holy Spirit that said it.
I just remember you being frustrated because you had no clear direction, which always frustrates you.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, let's peel back the onion and figure out, right? Because you can't continue to do all things. And what was the thing you were asked to do, which was do the movie.
Right.
And then I thought, okay, well, this podcasting makes sense if it is going to be focused on the movie. I do remember that.
Yeah.
I don't remember agreeing to co-host, but.
Well, and so here's how I know that you actually said it.
So you know what? If honestly, because now the flesh is saying, I don't remember signing up. I'm a backtrack. So clearly, and I trust that what you're saying is true.
But here's how I know it's true, right?
The Holy Spirit telling me yes.
Because this right, what we're doing right now is just going to be Neil and I. We were just going to talk. And I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or not, but I was just like, well, Miss Thatch said she'd be part of this. She said she'd like to talk about the movie. So let me invite her. And I just invited her. I was like, I don't want to, because here's the thing. When you say no to stuff that I feel passionate about, I'm like, okay, I don't want to get mad at her. I don't want this to be a tenuous situation. So, but I asked her and she said yes, like immediately. And I was like, huh.
Well, I do remember you pitching. You did say.
Here we go.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I do think it's because it was about me. I hate to say it, poking holes, but asking the questions, like, because I still was like, what are you guys doing? What exactly? How are you actually going to be flying and finding the atheists? I think and when you said, well, those are the things you can ask, then I was game. But if it was just to talk about the process, that wouldn't have resonated with me.
Right.
So I think that's, if I remember,
it was because
you pitched it that way.
I think we just had to promise to put her at the front of the poster and we just be in the background. And that's all
it took. Name in big font.
Here we are, and she's here. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happened that night. She's here.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's funny. I don't remember that.
So listen, the most beautiful part of this, I love watching you guys, by the way. It makes me miss you. The reality is this. The reality is this. It almost doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter, right? The film is an exciting process. Who doesn't like a little Hollywood in their life? But the film is being made for a reason, right? The podcast was a similar reason, different medium. So now you aim one medium to help generate the original concept of why we were supposed to do it. So really, it almost, at least for me only, it doesn't really matter because God's going to win. So even if she had not done it, we'd still be here. And if I didn't do it, you'd still be here because you never give up. I'll give you that. So basically,
I might take breaks, but I don't give up.
Yeah. I think the important thing is that the podcast and the amazing listeners that you developed over time through all the other projects. Now, I imagine if they love the podcast, why wouldn't they love to see it in a visual medium? Where you can actually see a little more conflict and see a little bit more resolution and see someone actually experiencing the power of God or fighting it. I think that's what people want to see. We can't make that up. We can bring 30 cameras for 30 days and maybe not catch that moment. Or we can be shooting for only half a day and the moment happens and we're like, oh my God, we're almost done. So there's only one guy that knows the outcome of that part.
Right.
And I believe that pretty strongly, all of us, because I know you guys, right? Outside of all of this, we know each other well. And I think that God knows who to bring to the table to finally, I guess for you, Nick, like the people that you desire to have the support to get you across the finish line, he's placing them whether we had agreed or not. And guess what?
That's right.
He knows exactly who he's meant to be on this stream tonight to help support this vision to get it across the finish line. Right now, we got this. We got this.
That's right.
We got it.
Absolutely.
Wow. So for everybody watching this, we're not live, but what I was thinking about doing was releasing this later on a live stream and kind of monitoring the comments so I can respond that way. So if you're commenting right now, we're not actually live, but we will do our best to respond. So you articulate that really well. And Seth, what do you think? What did I say that really sparked your interest with this movie in a area that you typically don't really want to be too much involved with, right?
Well, I mean, I do think your conversation, the whole premise behind having the conversation, does resonate with me. And so that is why I'm part of it. I mean, I do think those conversations to be had. I do think it's nice to be able, like, seeing people struggle, right? I feel like that's what moves people more than, when with someone who's always believed, right, and shares and whatnot. And it's really, those who struggled with that relationship with God. And so that's what resonates with me. Now, being part of the podcast and talking about the film, it is because I want to understand, the process. I think that's just, I think, having been with you over 20 years, there's certain things, I look at things different than you do. And I think, we work well when we have a clear understanding of, okay, this is the goal, which is the movie. You come at it very visionary. You're tenacious about, staying on track. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, how is it going to happen? Right. And not to say, one's better than the other, but I just, that's what interests me is like, okay, this is going to happen. And so let me, be part of it to kind of ask those questions and also just understand, where is it going as your wife to be able to say, yeah, I fully support this because I fully understand what's happening.
Right.
Sure. Because it's a huge undertaking. It is a huge undertaking. It is a resource taker. It is a time taker, especially as you reach the editing phase. But it's exciting. Listen, it's not my first rodeo with film or TV. And every time I start, I tell people patience is more valuable than the money we raise. It's more valuable than who we get. It's more valuable than who we interviewed. Because at the end of the day, a film can be made quickly or it can be made over a decade, but it doesn't matter. It's all about the patience game. And we've outlasted, I think, a lot of things. I think that we're looking at a green lit highway right now. Right. I think we're looking at sort of a clean runway right now. I think really soon when we're in the process of editing the crowdfunding campaign video that we so long ago recorded with so much intent. But ironically, when I was watching the footage last week to kind of refamiliarize myself with it, because just like you, I stepped away from it. Now I'm hearing it with fresh ears and I'm like, this is good. Like I stepped away from it. And man, maybe we should have. Because now I don't think I'm thinking at all how I was when we shot it. So
interesting.
And so now I'm hearing stuff I didn't even really pay attention to. And to be honest with the person watching right now is I am a believer, but I am an eighth grounded, like as Nick is. I am a believer. And when I go see Nick, when we're out praying for people, I'm constantly out of my comfort zone. I am new to that level of intent and that level of fierce defender of the word. So to me, now that I went over there and then when I come back, I'm totally seeing it totally different. Had we cut this without me going there, we might have a much more watered down piece for sure. So that was why we got attacked. And I think watching the footage post attack, because that was a really fearful time in hospital. It's now I'm pissed, right? So now I'm like, oh, now I'm gonna edit the parts that I was gonna leave out because they felt a little too hammered down. Now I'm like, oh, that's going back in, right? You see what I'm saying? You got to attack me, and then now I have to be like, oh no, that's not allowed. So now I'm looking at it as from not just as an editor, I'm looking at it as someone that tried to stretch a little bit to strengthen my own little faith to back my butt, go be with his family and to go out with him at night, which my intent was to record it and keep him safe. That's it. I didn't know at some point in the evening in a Walmart in the middle of nowhere that I would put the camera away and start to engage and pray for people. Never done that in my entire 49. I turned 50 in May. And when I get home, I'm in the hospital being told that it could be fatal in 3 days. Like,
I didn't know that.
Of course, now when I look, at it, I gotta save something for the show. and so now when I look at the footage, I'm coming at it from now it's our turn to swing back. That was good. that was a good try.
Yeah.
Right? And so same with you, right?
Yeah.
Same with you. And now your wife is beside
Right.
you. I'm over
It's amazing.
here. We're going to tell everybody that it's going to move forward, and that the next stage will be a crowdfunding campaign where we desire a ton of support, because the most expensive part is the first part, which is to travel around with a crew, getting equipment, going out to the middle of nowhere, flights, rental cars, whatever, get to the story, to record it. That's the hardest part, because after that it becomes post-production, and there's different costs that go with that. But I think that the biggest mountain is the production. And we've already proven that without trying, we were able to raise some funds because people believe in you. Imagine now when we are intent, very purposefully asking for support. And I think that they're going to be there. I think that they're going to be there because you took so many years building that up.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we are. I think that's the step that we're standing on is, hey, do you want to see the movie now with us? Or do you want to just hear about it? Or do you want to know that a piece of your investment, your time, or your belief is going to be on a silver screen with your name on the end of it?
Wow. That's powerful, man.
Thanks. So I have a question. Have you talked specifically about, because that was one of the surprises, is that you were traveling, right? That was one of the things I'm like, oh.
Oops. So what's the question? So the question is, the question is, why would we travel? I mean, Neil, what's your understanding about traveling for this film?
Well, the last film we did, when we identified who we want to tell a story about, we ended up realizing that we could bring them to the studio and interview them, and it'll look really pretty, like we did with Nick. And then there's, what if we went to where that atheist lives? What if we shot this interview right smack in the middle of their hometown, where they're comfortable, where they're more likely to say what they really feel because they're home, right? What if we took this fight to the most atheist cities in America and then go and say, now we're going to have this conversation? I think that intensifies the story 10x versus let's just bring everyone to a safe studio in Florida or North Carolina where we control the entire environment. They feel totally awkward. So I just believe if you're going to do this, and if you're going to be really fair to both sides of the conversation, let's take it to where they live. Let's take it to where they feel safe. Not a keyboard war interview right in your living room. Now you're bold. And I've realized in the previous documentaries I've made, people are emboldened when they're in their house, when they're near whatever inspires them to be an atheist or be a Christian. And I think then that's when we're going to get not only the good story, I think that's where you're going to get that moment that we're hoping for, which is that they experience the power of God for the very first time. And how much more dramatic is that when it's happening where they are empowered to not feel it?
Wow. See, I hadn't even thought about that.
Well, I'm thinking that is, had I heard that from the beginning, I'd
I forgot to mention that was some hospital thinking.
I'm not sure I would have fired off all the questions, because I was like, wait a minute, traveling? Like how? And now all those questions seem rather irrelevant, which are logistical questions, when it's in that context, right? That we are, trying to meet people where they're at, which I can totally relate to. And so, that becomes crystal clear to me as to why traveling versus inviting folks to a studio makes so much more sense for everyone involved. I mean, I even think, if you're traveling, if it's not just you as a Christian, but others are joining you again, having them in their also city, which they're going to be much more vested in sharing the word, right? On their streets, not being invited to, to share somewhere else. Not that, you can't share,
that's true,
and spread the word that way. But I think it serves both Christian and non-Christian. And
aside from that, if we think now as filmmaker for 2 seconds and kind of think of what a filmmaker sees is a tapestry. Like, we also don't want this to be a boring studio shot film where the audience is dying to go get a Coke because nothing's changing visually. But when you're seeing Portland and you look it up and you find out it's one of the most atheist cities in America, and then you're seeing it's rainy and nasty outside, or it's really sunny in North Carolina, I think it also gives you a visual ride as a viewer that makes it more attractive. And now you're like, not only am I invested in the concept, not only am I invested in the story, what a beautiful film. Right.
Wow.
What a pretty thing to see and experience versus, it was a great studio production, man. Loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for the traveling for me, I didn't even think of that part. I mean, I did after you and I kind of talked about it a little bit, but then the part for me, I was like, man, let's go to the places where we're hearing stories about, tens of thousands of people getting healed at either a
Oh,
church or
that too.
some guy in his basement, and let's take the atheist to that guy, or Uganda, Patrick Wandera,
Oh yeah.
where he's fighting witch doctors every day in his office and seeing all kinds of crazy things that we couldn't even fathom in this country. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I had in my mind is let's bring them to where the action's happening as well.
Right.
But
to witness it, because I think there's a difference between clearly hearing someone's story as through your podcast. I think that's what's mostly it's been, right? You have someone sharing as the Christian, their story of healing, and have an atheist hear that and respond, right? And now you're placing them right in the moment, witnessing, right? And having them deal with the emotions or lack of emotion and say, okay, well, what's going on? I think is powerful. So I think
you can do
balancing both. That, do both. Exactly. I was just saying balancing the environment to where they're seeing clearly this is a Christian environment, right? Where they're sharing the word, there's healing versus, okay, there's none of that here. Right. And then you as a Christian being exposed to that, to being around people who are like, yeah, we don't believe that. We don't have any interest in that. And then seeing what happens, right? Because and God will show up.
And that's the thing I want everybody to understand who's not a believer right now. Yeah, we're Christians and we're all in, but I think it's the premise of this whole platform, right? We're bold in what we believe and what we say, but we want to give the atheists and the non-believers, people of other faiths, we want to give them a voice to tell us why they believe what they believe. And so I meant to say this earlier. You mentioned, why do you care what they think? Here's the thing. I am fascinated by the way atheists think. I think that is the boldest worldview I can even imagine, to deny the existence of God, or as they mention these days, they lack belief in the existence of a God, and to be sort of all in. And I've seen the sort of premature atheist, ex-Christian. I've seen the evolution of folks that have grown from, I want truth. I'm realistic. I'll go back to being a Christian again, to vehemently opposed to Christianity and all in with their own assembly. And that mindset fascinates me. And I want to know what those hangups are. So I ask questions. I wonder what they think. And I want everybody watching now or listening to know that we want your feedback. We want to know what you, the atheist, the skeptic, the agnostic, the Muslim, whoever's following us now, what do you want to see on this film?
Right.
How can we give you a voice without swaying our audience that, hey, look, this is what we're promoting. Yeah, of course we have an agenda. We're Christians. We want to show people the power of God. But look, if the power of God doesn't end up showing up on film, we want you to be able to see it and decide for yourself. I don't want to, this film, the Holy Spirit is the one that converts people. Yeah. That wins people, wins their soul, that saves them. And here's the thing: we're not even called to convert people. We're called to share the truth of Jesus Christ and what happened. But there's power associated with that the church doesn't. A lot of people, let's put it this way: a lot of people just don't know about it.
Yeah. Well point of clarification. When I say you don't care, you shouldn't. Why care what they think? I'm talking about about you. Right. I'm very big. Like, you tell me that time, love my parents to death. And one thing I've learned from them is that other people's opinions of you don't matter. Be secure in who you are, know your truth. And it doesn't say that if I get feedback from my husband, I don't take it. Right. But I'm talking about being shaken to my core because someone didn't like, something I did or the way I said it, so that's where I say that, because you and I are different in that way in some senses. So that's what I mean, like, because you're sharing your process and almost like, well, they might think that's just, that's what I mean. What do you care? Like, the Holy Spirit moves in you, that your intentions are rooted, right? Because the Holy Spirit has moved in you. So trying to explain or needing to get confirmation in return is what I mean by what does it matter? Why they don't believe? Absolutely. And with three boys, I want them to be able to hear people, listen, and understand others' perspective. But more importantly, and this is one thing we talked about when they were little, is to be able to defend why they believe.
That's right.
Don't just say you believe because mommy and daddy believe. Don't say you believe because you were raised in a house that had the Bible out and about at all times and you went to church. Believe because you yourself, right, have, studied. You yourself have put truth to the test. You yourself have had conversations, difficult as they may be with others from other religions and other, backgrounds. And so, yes, that perspective matters, but it's more about internalizing and having them kind of affirm why you're doing this. I mean, Holy Spirit speaks, we move, period.
That's right.
How you feel about that, irrelevant.
But what attracted me as a filmmaker to this, because I'm just going to be blunt. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just a believer, and that's the way it is.
I know you don't. I love it.
But what I liked about it when we were talking at the restaurant, just kind of talking about the idea, was we were not trying to convince anybody or get anybody. The film purpose wasn't to change minds. It was to expose both opposing views and then let people walk away with, wow, they changed my perspective. They challenged my perspective, or I still agree what I agree with even more now than ever. Right. So I don't want them to leave with something that I planted to get them to change their mind. I want to see if we just get them to change their mind. If what we showed you is enough, because every other way that someone has showed you just feels like they're selling it or they're judging you. So if you tell the story, and you tell the story in the most honest way, which was, I believe, what God calls us as creators of content to do, is like, let's be fair and show what is really happening. And then let educated, smart, because listen, they're thinking how you said, we think that their worldview is a little bit, oh my God, how could they feel that? They're thinking the exact same of us.
Right.
How can we be weak enough to think that some magical power controls everything and we just walk towards the light? Like, they're thinking the exact polar opposite, with the exact level of strength and the exact level of disbelief. And so I believe that this project, if you guys want to get behind it, is help us help us record scenarios, right, where opposing views will be, can be, and shall be challenged. And let's just walk away, everyone open-minded. If you walk away different, yay, amazing. And if you don't, that was a great movie. Thanks for support. We'll do it again next summer. And then it's just, you gotta let people film, and music and any type of creative art that inspires them because of what they're going through, because of the changes in their heart, because of a disbelief or a belief. We have no say in that. And if we do that, it will slant the film. They'll question the film or say it was nothing but a marketing piece for Christianity. And I got behind it because I felt of how willing Nick is to be. I used to always say, how do you talk to them and not defend your belief so much? Like, he's very neutral. He gives them a safe place to talk. Hey, everybody listening, not everybody does that. Most people are inviting you, hey, atheists, come out and talk. So that once you expose how you feel, then they pound on you.
Right.
I always tell Nick, how do you do it? Like, how I was watching him with an atheist on the street who was just adamant that God is nothing. And I'm watching him and I'm just waiting for his face to turn red and for him to ask me for Thor's hammer to smite her and be done. Like, but he's like, no, keeps asking questions, but why? You don't really believe that, do you? But do you? But why? And all three of us were starting to get tired and pacing and like, come on, Nick, let this lady go. Like, you're not gonna win. And but it's his demeanor. And in my heart, I'm thinking, this is exactly what we signed up to do, is to stand out here with cameras to see what happens if he doesn't give up. Not the opposite. We're tired.
Right.
Yeah. We end up hugging. We end up hugging after that.
Yeah. So, well, what I vision the movie being is almost, when you do your live events, stressful as they were, one of I think the things I appreciate most, that it was live. There was no editing. So, if Nick was going to have an off day, if the Christian, right, who was invited got flustered, and the atheist, said, there's no editing. So people were just raw. They were real. Right. And so, that's what I going back to your point, about the movie, is that just having, those real authentic conversations that are being had, not just by Nick, but anyone who does outreach, who goes out on the streets, to share the word with people who are, sometimes believers, but maybe, lukewarm, as Nick likes to say, or, maybe, they were at one point and they're not, but they're not quite atheists. And then those are, are clearly say, nope, I'm an atheist. And so having that recorded and seeing what happens, and like you said, maybe both people walk away the same as when they first said hello to each other, but maybe, one or both of them walk away very differently. If anything, maybe, there's a Christian to me, even though the person didn't say, oh my gosh, yes, I believe, there's something to be said about strengthening, right, your faith, right, getting more comfortable with the uncomfortable and sharing, right, and then learning, oh, this is why they think this way, or this is that person's story, and how I can see why you'd be mad at, God, and saying, my life sucked to this point. I blame you for all that. Well, where did you learn? Who taught you that was God bringing, that the bad to you, which it isn't, right? And the word will tell you that that's not true. So having almost kind of those live sessions recorded, we're not trying, but having those recorded was what I picture the movie to be, is all those live events you had in the past, you're now going to be doing, but traveling and then putting them into this movie and saying, here it is, folks. This is what happens when a Christian and an atheist, or Christian and Muslim, or, clearly talk in a civil way. And now, like you say, walk away. And what are you going to do with this information?
Yeah, I think it'll be go ahead, Neil.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say briefly. I kept telling Nick in the giant truck that he picked me up in. I said, even if it just teaches you to talk to your atheist friend or brother that you can't ever talk to, but now you saw the movie, so you kind of find a common ground. That what if you're a Christian parent with an atheist child? Even if it just teaches you how to go upstairs and now say, I get it. I get what you're going through, but now let's keep talking. Maybe I gave up on talking to you because you're not doing what me and mom say, so you're done. Move out. That's what we do. So even if it just gets you to go back upstairs on that 100th time that you walk downstairs, frustrated and pissed off, that's what the movie to me is for. If it gets the atheist child to walk into the parents' room and say, I'm still not there, but I'm listening. So I don't need to win. I think we just need to trigger that door opens again, that conversation opens again. We don't say move out at 18 because you don't believe. So that's my vision as a filmmaker, supporting, his vision as a visionary. Your now vision supporting him is that, I want my daughter to see that daddy was open to everybody and was willing to even go and make a movie that get him judged by everybody I know. I could have everybody just suddenly say, well, you weren't that strong of a believer. How are you suddenly directing a film about this? Right. What gives you credibility to get on a podcast with Nick? And who are you? I never hear you speak of your worldview, because that's just not me. I don't walk around doing that. But
that was me 4 years or 5 years ago. Yeah.
And I think that's where we are. I think a lot of people are going to meet us right there. They're going to say, me too.
That's perfect.
So now what, Nick?
Yeah. What happens next?
Well, I want to talk a little bit. I got some questions for you from the perspective of, and maybe questions for me as we kind of wrap up. We got maybe 10 more minutes. The podcast itself, what's that going to look like? I, as you can tell, we have starting to get a clearer and clearer vision of the movie, but the podcast itself, a couple of questions that come to mind. Are we still going to have atheist guests on here? Are we still going to bring on believers that have supernatural stories? Are we still going to do live events? What do you all think?
My mindset is that if it's going to serve the film, it can't just be the whole show about talking about the film. I think you certainly should still have a little bit of those conversations, and then they lead into, well, this is something we're going to try and do in the film, or here's the stage where we are in the film based on the story. I think you still need to do its original purpose, just not a whole. Now it's a 15-20 minute light conversation or conversation, and then how is that going to now impact the movie? What did we learn in this conversation that we could take to the film? Because then the film is a living document versus, well, we wrote this film and this podcast is just at the end we're going to keep saying support the film. That's useless. If the film keeps changing, because each time we have these different sort of small conversations, it's a living document. Right. And not only that, it's an entertaining podcast, because at the end of the day, it's education through entertainment, not entertainment through education. And so I think that people will get educated because they feel that there's it's entertaining, but it's all very impactful. And at the end, we're going to discuss, how could this possibly fit into our movie? Does it strengthen it? Maybe it has nothing to do with it. That was such a cool conversation. Now, hey, let's talk a little bit of where we are with the film. That's kind of how I see it. Like, We're always going to get to the film because if the podcast drives to the film, it has to go there every time. But yeah, why not still have some cool things that lead into that? But in the end of the day, at least what I felt when you dropped me off to the airport in the big truck was, that thing was huge.
You need a ladder to get up on that thing.
Yeah, and I'm chubby.
We're in North Carolina, y'all.
Yeah, we got to negotiate. I'm a chubby kid, man. But I think at the end of the day, it's just that end of the day, it's that the podcast is to educate you and introduce you to the film, invite you into making that film, or make history with us. You get 3 choices. In the meantime, hey, here's a cool story. But at the end of the day, now that you heard that story, are you interested? Are you invested? Or are you going to go do something about this?
See, this is why I partnered with Neil. You hear the wisdom coming out of this guy?
He knows what he's doing. I mean,
goodness.
Now, what about reviewing?
And he DJs.
Now, as you're saying that, I missed that one.
I said, and he DJs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Podfest, baby, coming up.
I had him personally DJ in my house.
Yes, that was
awesome. It was phenomenal.
That was awesome. Yes. What if you were to go back and revisit past podcasts? You know, I mean, it's almost like, right? You know, like there's been some where you're just like, man, if we could do that, right? As in this, right, and record it, right? Actually, I think that would also, because there's some that are, were really good. I think that, that really kind of, when I say good, I feel like both parties were civil, but and engaging, and there was a lot of thought-provoking people, both guests clearly were knowledgeable, were content experts in their respective areas. And then there's sometimes where things imploded, right? On both sides. And I think those, going back to that and say, well, what happened? What emotion? Why was there so much emotion there?
Yeah.
And then kind of saying,
and then we talk about it.
Right. And then we can kind of talk about that and say, oh, okay. And kind of weigh in and say, well, I think this is what happened. Or it's also lesson learned as, as you go out and you're talking like, wow, we don't want this to happen, or, this is what, right. Cause that shut down the conversation, right. Which can happen. And, when you're out in the streets recording, that it is what it is. But I think it's good, for,
I like that idea.
Directing us. Right. It can direct us, but it also can give some lessons learned, right? As you're moving forward in filming, a different location.
Let me ask you this.
And you're bringing life to old content. It doesn't get old. You're bringing life back to it.
Oh, you gave me that look. I know that look. Yes.
No, I was just going to ask live. Would you be willing to get on with an atheist?
Me get on with atheist?
Heck yeah, she would. Yes, I will pay to see that.
Now, see that's where I'm like, I don't know. I'm not too sure I can stay calm like Nick does.
Oh, I told Nick, listen, I am not the one that's going to have this ultra powerful.
I'm a hot-blooded Puerto Rican. I go from 0 to 100 quick.
Well, me too. Venezuelan on weekends, we're the same. I think he handles it so well. I may not. So I told him I'm happy to co-host. I'm happy to definitely bring everything that has to do with this project, and I'm happy to even tiptoe in it. But I am not armed.
Yeah, well, not only my temper. Well, I feel like I can get frustrated. But the other thing, and this is, and maybe this is, it could be an excuse for not having the conversations. But there's times where I listen in, and when Nick. When Nick is trying to get someone to say, okay, why do you believe, right? What you believe, like show me walk me through your thinking, or show me the evidence. And that gets completely ignored. Right. And I feel that non-believers, when they're asked very specific questions, don't answer the question. And I sometimes get frustrated with him. I said, you didn't drill it back in. You kind of let them not answer the question, right?
Or they answer with another question.
Right. And I feel like I would, I tell Nick, I think this is how it would go. I'd ask the question, they'd answer, and I'd repeat my question, and they'd answer, and I'd repeat my question. And then it'd be like, well, I can say it maybe in Spanish, you speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I'd be like, how else do I rephrase the same question before I'm just like, you don't want to answer it. I'm not sure we can have a conversation, because I feel like,
I can't wait for this to happen.
Because I feel like
you're a dead ender.
Right. Like we're at a dead end, and I'm like, I'm out. Okay. So, and I will admit that could be, something that I've put in my mind, and I don't want to, because I know it will frustrate me. And so I'd rather just not even go there. Because I'm not sure how someone react, because I'm not sure I've ever seen someone be that. I think Jason is a little bit of that, where he kind of, was like, no, let's circle back around. Thank you. But the question was, I was very explicit about the question. So to answer your question, my immediate is like, no, I've never, you've been doing this for so long. But
it's not to leave Nick by himself. I want to piggyback on what she just said, because it's by no means dismissive. I don't think that when we say co-host, I think we each bring our strength, and I don't think that that there can't be a show where Nick still does that, but Nick is hosting that, right? And there's some episodes that maybe don't require all three of us to do that. Like, at the end, we still come on, we talk about the content. I mean, we still talk about the movie and how that might impact the movie, and not just the movie, but also maybe mildly our opinions on it, whatever. But I think that if God calls you to deal with that guy and you still got to deal with them, and it's you and them on the show, and then we come on for commentary at the end, that's fine. So there's a lot of ways to do it, because we also want to make sure we're respecting that. We don't want to trigger what we just said we don't want to do, is just change their mind, right? Or just piss them off. It's got to be, I think that we're here to capture that. At least my role is facilitate the capture, right? And the recording and the accountability. I don't feel that I would be strong enough at this moment to be able to even defend 1,000,000,000% exactly what I feel either. And we'll frustrate each other to death, right? Because I'm learning as I fight. So right now, I feel like I'm going way more uncomfortable than I ever have. Even just doing this today is for Neil, which I'm normally that guy. Just, hey man, you understand, I worked at the mayor's office, man. I got friends in every walk of life. If I say one thing to one, I piss off 30 people that didn't do anything to me. Like, I'm still learning how you were 4 years ago, Nick, right? Where you were trying to resolve, like, I got to stop being that guy. And I'm still back there. So I can't just jump, right? I mean, I got to do your walk. I got to like praying for people. I came home like, whoa, I don't even know how to do that. And that was awesome. And then my pastor said right away to me, do you want to do that every Friday? And I said, nope. because I told him I did it because Nick made me brave enough to do it. Right.
Wow.
And if I go Friday, I may be inspired by that little dude to do it. Right. Or the Lord.
That's cool.
Right. So,
cool.
I'll do it. And will I do it every time I go see Nick? Nope. But that time I was just capturing Nick, and I got so motivated. Like, I was so proud of this dude. And it wasn't, proud of this Christian dude, for all you non-believers listening. I wasn't proud of my Christian friend. I walked around the corner and he was talking to these two teenagers at the electronics department. They weren't just like praying with him. They were like hugging him like this. And these are kids, not 49-year-old Neil that's got a wisdom behind me. These were young kids. And when I came around the corner with the camera, I just put my camera away and I just started praying for these kids. And I don't even know how to do that. That's specifically cool. I don't have the training.
Hey, Holy Spirit moved in you.
No idea what verse I was going to say. You know what I did do though? I was just like, whoa, and more whoa. So technically, I'm the viewer of the movie. I got
at that moment, right?
To change my mind. Okay, so I think we just take each show as it comes. I think if we approach it as three co-hosts, that when needed, we team up like the Avengers. And Nick leads the charge, and when it's time to definitely remind people of how we're going to team up as a big giant family to make this cool movie for everyone, I think that's when we really co-host, because that's where God wants Naz and I to back you up and to also lead.
Amen. Amen.
That's me. That's my answer for at least tonight. It might change tomorrow.
And that's awesome. That's a great way to end it. Perfect stopping point. We're out of time. Satch, any closing words? Let's let you have the last words.
Me, the last word?
I mean, it's what you're used to. So
get it, girl.
I don't have any closing words. I mean,
that's a wrap.
I believe. I believe. Let's just put it there. I feel like saying I believe.
I love it. Well, thank you both so much for the time. Everybody, it's going to be exciting. I'm juiced up right now, and like I got the motivation and like the revigoration. What they call it in Christianese, the fresh anointing. I feel it tonight. So.
And we look good
got some
too.
Really good stuff coming your way.
You got a hot crew now,
we do.
Bro.
We do. You. Oh yeah. All right, everybody.
Hey, can we get you a DJ a little bit, maybe, on the podcast?
We'll get it. We're gonna get it. All right.
Hey, man, this
Until
is
next
amazing.
time, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.